So the title of this episode is I Alone Escaped. And on the surface, that's about the Tumbleton messenger, the guy who survives the burning town and drags himself back to warn everybody, which is how the Blacks get baited into the trap. So on a basic level, that's what the title's about. And that's fine. But I think there's a second thing going on with it, and it's got to do with Daeron. Because the show gave that title, a guy who walks out of a fire alive when everybody around him dies, to the exact episode where they finally bring Daeron into the story. And Daeron in the books is a guy who dies in a fire. Or, well, maybe. And that maybe is basically going to be the whole thing. And on top of that, the show did a couple of things this episode that they straight up did not have to do. Stuff that isn't in the book at all. And once you line that up with the title, it starts to feel like maybe they're quietly setting something up with this character. So let me walk through it, because I think it's actually one of the more interesting things they've done this season, and it mostly went past people. But first I should back up a little, because there's a decent chance you don't even remember Daeron was in this episode. So Daeron is Alicent's fourth kid. He's the youngest of the Green children, and honestly, he's the one everybody forgets, which is kind of the point. While his older brothers were down in King's Landing running the war, Daeron spent the whole thing way down south in Old Town, basically fostered out to Lord Ormond Hightower as his ward. So he's a squire, he's a teenager, he's off doing his own thing far away from everybody, and the show keeps him so far off to the side that nobody's really paying attention to him, which again is going to matter later. But in the books, Daeron's actually kind of great before the end. He's got a dragon, Tessarion, the Blue Queen, this blue dragon. He flies out of the south with Ormond's army and basically turns their whole campaign around. At the First Battle of Tumbleton, he and Tessarion take the town, and he gets knighted for it and picks up the nickname Daeron the Daring. So for a while there, he's like the best commander the Greens have, and he's a genuinely decent kid on top of it. And if you've watched this show for any amount of time, you already know that's a bad sign. Like a young, brave, actually good character who's doing really well. That's usually the show winding up to kill somebody. So, yeah. And that's basically what happens. Tumbleton gets attacked a second time, and in that second battle, Daeron dies. And that part's not a theory, just to be clear. The book says he dies. Every version of the story agrees he dies. Nobody's arguing about that. But here's the weird part, and this is where it gets interesting. The book can't actually tell you how he dies. It gives you 3 different versions, and doesn't pick one. Version 1, a sellsword named Black Trombo kills him. Version 2, it's just some random soldier, nobody named, in the confusion. And version 3, his tent catches fire during the battle and collapses on him, and he burns up inside it. And the book kind of leans toward the burning tent one, but it's not sure. So that's 3 different deaths for one guy, and no body anybody can actually point to. And normally, and this part's important, normally that means nothing, because that's just how these history books work. The whole thing is written like a bunch of maesters and a court fool arguing decades later about what happened, and one of them, this fool named Mushroom, straight up makes stuff up half the time. So 3 contradictory versions of one event is completely normal for this book. On its own, it's not suspicious. But you know that rule on shows like this, where if you don't see a body, they're probably still alive. That's kind of what we've got here. 3 versions, no confirmed body, and the death the book likes best is the one where he burns up, which means even if there is a body, it's burned past the point where you could ID it. So just keep that in your back pocket for now. Okay, so now here's the stuff the show added that isn't in the book. The decoy. So this whole plot, this episode with the fake Daeron, the kid with the bleached blonde hair that they pass off as the prince, the handoff out on the field, Ormond handing him over, and then Alicent taking one look and basically going, yeah, that's not my son. None of that is in the book. Like, at all. The writers made it up. And it's a whole thing too, it's not some throwaway. You've got Ormond calmly handing this kid over like he's the real prince. You've got the other side accepting it, and then you've got that Alicent moment where she clocks it right away. So they spent real screen time and a real emotional beat on it. It's basically a whole little set piece built around passing off a fake Daeron. Which, again, for a character the book kills off in like a sentence, is kind of a lot of effort. And you'll notice they shoot it so that you're specifically checking whether it's really him or not. The hair's a little off on purpose. They want you doing the exact thing Alicent's doing, going, wait, is that him? Is that not him? So the whole scene is kind of training you to ask, is this the real Daeron or a fake one? Which is a weird thing to build a whole subplot around for a character the book barely even bothers to kill, if you think about it. And to make room for this decoy stuff, they actually cut a bunch of the book. In the book, Daeron grows up in King's Landing with his siblings. He even shares a wet nurse as a baby with Rhaenyra's son Jace, because the two sides of the family were trying to raise the kids close, so they wouldn't hate each other later. The show cut all of that. They shipped him off to Old Town, made him a stranger to his own mom, and used that space to build this body double thing that George R.R. Martin never wrote. So this is where the theory actually comes together. You've got a character whose death in the book is this vague, nobody, three different versions mess. And you've got a show that just spent a whole subplot teaching you how to swap in a fake Daeron for the real one, in the episode named after the one guy who walks out of a fire. So basically, I think the show is setting up to have Daeron survive his book death, and I think this fake Daeron decoy is the tool they're going to use to do it. That's the theory. Now, let me actually make the case for it, because I don't want you to just take my word for it. And the thing that makes me think I'm not just reaching here is that the whole episode is doing the same thing over and over. Like, it's a pattern. You've got the fake prince. You've got a living king getting declared dead by his enemies, so they can act like he's gone. You've got a survivor showing up at the gate and getting called a liar, like an imposter. So over and over this episode, it's people faking who's alive, who's dead, who's really who. That's kind of the theme of the whole hour. The war isn't just dragons. It's people messing with the official story of who's who. And honestly, the part that gets me is that the decoy trick didn't just work on Daemon in the show. It worked on us. Like, for a couple minutes there, you looked at that blonde kid and you believed he was the prince. Same as everybody in the scene did. So the show basically proved, on us, the actual audience, that it can put a fake Daeron in front of a room and have everybody buy it. And that feels like the kind of thing you set up on purpose so you can use it again later. And Daeron's the one character who's right in the middle of this whole identity thing twice. Once as the decoy, the fake, and once as the guy whose real death is that vague nobody thing in the book. So out of everybody they could have built this fake prince subplot around, they picked the one forgettable kid they could have just killed off in a single line. That's a lot of effort for a character you're supposedly just going to burn in a tent off-screen. Okay, so let me actually explain where he dies, because the location is a big part of why this works. So Tumbleton gets hit twice, like I said. The first time is Daeron's big win. But then, two of the dragon seeds who fought there, Hugh the Hammer and Ulf the White, decide they'd rather be lords than keep fighting for the Greens, so they basically take over the town. They're called the Two Betrayers. And then the second battle happens, and it's a total mess. So this guy, Adam Valerion, he's one of Corlys's bastard sons, the ones nobody at court trusts. He flies in at night on his dragon Seasmoke, alone, basically trying to prove he's loyal. And it turns into this huge dragon fight in the dark over a town full of drunk, mutinous soldiers. Seasmoke and Vermithor, this big bronze dragon, end up killing each other. And Tessarion, Daeron's dragon, ends up being the last one flying, and then she goes down too. So, it's 3 dragons dead in one night over this one little burned-out town. And rip Tessarion, honestly, she's a cool dragon and she basically ends up fighting on her own after Daeron's already down. And that's the situation Daeron dies in. It's night, it's chaos, there's a betrayal going on, everything's on fire, and there's basically nobody reliable around to actually see what happened to him. Which is exactly why the book has 3 versions and no body, because in the actual moment, nobody could tell. So if you're a writer and you want a spot to quietly lose a character and keep it ambiguous, this is honestly the perfect battle for it. It's already written to be confusing. So here's what that death actually gives them. And there's like 4 things. First is the fire. The version the book likes best is Daeron burning up in a tent, which means whatever body there is burned up. And you can't ID a burned body. So, we found the prince's body in the tent can be technically true and also a complete lie at the same time, because nobody can actually confirm it's him. Fire's basically the one death where you don't get a face to check. So if you're trying to fake a death, that's kind of the ideal setup. Second, and this is the one I think is the strongest, is the dragon. Because in the book, Tessarion doesn't die with Daeron. She dies separately. Daeron goes down early in the fighting, and then his dragon, with no rider, flies off on her own and gets into it with the other dragons. And she's actually the last of the 3 to die. So the dragon's death and the rider's death are 2 totally separate things that happen at different times. Which means the dragon dying is not proof the rider died. And think about it from a TV standpoint. You can show the dragon dying. Big emotional moment, everybody sees it. everybody's sad. The Blue Queen's gone. And nobody in the audience is sitting there going, okay, but where's the actual writer? You already got your death scene out of it. So the show can kill the dragon on camera and just leave Daeron himself as a question mark, and most people won't even notice they never actually confirmed him. And the book literally already sets it up that way. Third is the casting. So they cast this kid, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, who's like a very sympathetic-looking young actor, and then they just sat on him for 2 whole seasons. They dropped Daeron's name back in season 2, but kept him off-screen the entire time. And I'll be honest, this one's more of a hunch than the others. It's just me reading into casting, so take it a little lighter. But you don't usually hold a young actor back like that for 2 seasons just to have him die confused in a tent and never come up again. Usually, that means they've got plans for him. And fourth is just the title again. I Alone Escaped. Somebody surviving a fire that kills everybody else. And yeah, in the episode, that's the messenger. But they put that specific idea, a guy surviving a fire, into the exact episode where they introduce a guy who, in the book, dies in a fire. So it can mean the messenger now, and also be pointing at Daeron later. It doesn't have to be just one thing. So you put all 4 of those together. The burned body you can't ID, the dragon that dies separately, the actor they've been saving, and the title about surviving a fire. And that's a lot of stuff all pointing the same direction in one episode. Any one of them on its own, whatever, you'd shrug it off. But all 4 together, it's kind of hard to ignore. Now, okay, I already know what the big objection is, because it's the obvious one. The book says he's dead. Like, flat out. And that's true, and I'm not going to pretend it's not a problem for the theory. Because here's the thing. The 3 versions all disagree on how he dies, but they all agree that he dies. It's not like he goes missing and there's this gap. Every single version ends with Daeron dead at Tumbleton. And usually, when the sources argue about the details but agree on the outcome is the part that's actually true. So for this theory to work, the show has to overrule something the book is genuinely pretty firm on. And that's a real problem. I'm not going to handwave it. And there's a second problem, which is that this show kills characters you like all the time. Like, that's basically the whole point of the show. It builds somebody up, gets you attached, and then kills them off in some pointless, unfair way, specifically to make you feel how war wastes good people. So honestly, a decent brave Daeron getting a dumb, meaningless death in the dark would be extremely on brand. Like, that is very much a thing this show would do. And then there's a third possibility, which is that maybe the decoy isn't setting up anything at all. Maybe it's just there for Alicent. Like, the actual emotional point of that scene is a mom who barely knows her own kid, because he got sent away as a baby, looking at a fake and instantly knowing it's not him. And that's a genuinely good, sad scene all by itself. So it's totally possible they made up the whole decoy thing just for that one moment. And nothing else. I don't personally think that's all it is, but I could be wrong. And honestly, anybody who tells you they're 100% sure either way is kidding themselves. So it's not a slam dunk, is what I'm saying. It's basically a bunch of opportunities the show set up, versus the fact that the book is clear he dies and the show is very willing to kill people you like. That's the actual tension here. But here's the thing that pushes me toward the theory anyway. Look at how much of Daeron's book story the show has already changed. Like, the book says he grew up in King's Landing with his siblings. The show made it Old Town, alone. The book has him sharing a wet nurse with Jace. The show cut it. The book has no decoy at all. The show made the whole thing up. So before this kid has even died on the show, they've already rewritten basically everything about him from the book. So when people go, but the book says he dies, my thing is, okay, but the book said a lot of things about Daeron that the show has already thrown out. For most characters, the book's a pretty good guide to where the show's going. But for this specific kid, they've been treating the book more like a rough draft they keep rewriting. So I don't think the book says he dies is as solid for Daeron as it would be for pretty much anybody else, just because they've already changed everything else about him. And honestly, this isn't even just a Daeron thing. This show has shown over and over that it'll move book stuff around whenever it wants. Change when people die, change who's where, shuffle characters around. All of that. So, well, that's not how it goes in the book. It's kind of been a bad bet for this show in general. It's not like Fire and Blood is a locked script they're following page by page. It's more like a rough outline they riff on. So for a character they've already rewritten this hard, betting everything on his book death just feels shaky to me. And if they do go this way, I don't think it's some crazy resurrection thing, to be clear. Nobody comes back from the dead, there's no magic, none of that. It's way simpler, and honestly, they kind of already showed you how it would work this episode. Because look at how the decoy actually went. Ormond didn't lose the real Daeron. He handed over a fake on purpose, so Daemon would think he won, while the real Daeron was already inside Tumbleton the whole time. So they already flipped it once. The fake gets handed over, the real one's somewhere else. And the whole scene basically teaches you the rule. With Daeron, the body in front of you might not actually be him. And that's kind of a weird thing to teach the audience on purpose. Normally shows want you to always know who's who, but this one specifically spent a whole subplot getting you to go, wait, is that really him? So now you've got that in your head, and if they've already got you thinking that way, it'd honestly be a waste to not use it again. So you just run it forward. Second Tumbleton, everything's on fire, a tent burns down, somebody goes, we found the prince. And it's not actually him. Same as the kid they handed to Daemon wasn't actually him. And they wouldn't even have to explain it because they already taught you how it works this episode, with the hair and the fake handoff. That's the whole setup, right there. And just so we're clear on timing, none of this actually happens for a while. Second Tumbleton is further down the road, so if this is the plan, we're probably not cashing it in this season. This episode is just where they're quietly laying the groundwork for it. Which is kind of how this show works anyway, right? They set stuff up seasons ahead and let it sit there. So my assumption is, if they're doing this, the decoy here is the seed, and the actual payoff is a good ways off. Just keep it in the back of your head for whenever we finally get to Tumbleton. And the reason I don't think this would be a cheat, if they did it, is that it actually fits what the whole show is about. Because this whole season is basically about people controlling the story. Like, who gets declared dead, who gets called a liar, who's the real king or queen. Rhaenyra declares a living king dead. A real survivor gets called a fake. It's all people deciding the official version of who's alive and who's who, and using that as a weapon. So Daeron surviving his own recorded death, becoming the one guy the official history gets wrong, that actually fits the theme perfectly. It's not the show breaking its own rules, it's the show doing the exact thing it's been about all season, just to a Targaryen this time. Because the book, Fire and Blood, is supposed to be the official history, and the whole season's kind of been showing you that the official history lies. So having it be wrong about Daeron would basically be the show proving its own point. And honestly, that's the part that sells me more than anything else. It's not, I like Daeron so I want him to live. It's more like, the show keeps telling me that the story of who's alive is something people fake. And then it spent a whole episode showing me exactly how you'd fake it, and it used Daeron's face to do it. So where do I land on all this? I'd say it's real maybe. Not confirmed, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's confirmed, but a pretty solid maybe. The book says he dies, and I take that seriously, but the book also says it in this really easy to undo way, and then the show went out of its way to hand itself the exact tool you'd need to undo it. And my general rule is, when a show builds something it didn't need to build, pay attention to it, because they usually built it for a reason. And this, 1 point's right at Daeron. And if I'm right, then I Alone Escaped isn't just the episode title. It's kind of the show telling you the plan out loud and betting you'd forget by the time it actually happens. And if I'm wrong, and it was just a really good scene about Alicent and her son, and it got me, and honestly, that's a great episode too, so I can live with that one. So, I don't know, you tell me. That decoy, the fake Daeron, do you think that's the show setting something up, or do you think it was just a gut punch scene about a mom and that's it? Because that's really the whole question, and I've watched this episode way too many times and I still can't decide. So let me know what you think down in the comments. And yeah, that's the theory. I'll see you at Tumbleton, assuming everybody who's supposed to show up actually shows up.